So I've just watched the movie Fresh, and I have lots of thoughts. Maybe not about the movie itself, but about its message, about misogyny and modern dating, and just in general what it feels like for a girl. But first, let's recap what this movie is about. So, spoilers ahead. So, this is a movie about a woman named Noah who is very frustrated with dating scene. She tries online dating, she goes on some days, but it does not work out, and she just like loses all hope. But then one day she meets a guy named Steve in a grocery store in the perfect meet cute moment.
Have a good night.
Okay, you too.
And from that moment, their romance just feels like a complete fairy tale. All the red flags that Noah's best friend Molly tries to point out about Steve, they don't sway Noah.
What's his Instagram? I want to stalk a little bit.
He doesn't have one.
Say what? That's shady. I'm sorry. Red flag.
I mean, who cares about red flags if a guy looks like Sebastian Stan? Am I right? So she's really into him, and he seems to be really into her, and one day he invites her for a romantic weekend getaway in the woods, which is also a red flag, I guess.
Ugh, my cell isn't working.
Yeah, the service is shitty, but it's gonna get better in my place.
Cool.
And obviously he spikes her drink and chains her to the floor, and then tells her that he's going to cut up and sell her meat to his wealthy clients. Obviously.
I don't know what happened.
I drugged you.
So what is the genre of this movie? It's a horror, a kind of a modern horror, you know, like mixed with black comedy, a bit of like Get Out. I've actually seen this movie being described as Get Out for white women, which is fair. But at its core, it's a rape revenge horror, a very specific type of movie that is split into two parts. So the first part is usually very graphic, detailed brutalization of a victim, which is usually a woman. And the second part is her bringing on the revenge on her assailant. And the thing to know about this kind of movie is that it was made by men and for men, and it was very male gazy. The violence against the victim was always very graphic, very detailed, and the victim, which was usually the woman, she was objectified and sexualized a lot in these types of movies. It actually makes me question the motivation behind it. Why do men make those movies and what they get out of them? It's not really a cathartic experience for them, like it would be for women who experience this kind of existential threat all the time. I think it's kind of a common knowledge that men don't actually relate a lot to female characters. It's not their fault, really, because, you know, the industry itself taught us that male is a default. All the heroes were usually male. It's changing right now, but if we're talking about adults nowadays growing up, for example, me, in my childhood, most of my heroes were men. Sam Beckett, I still love you and I remember you. Men see themselves in their male heroes from childhood. So it's very understandable why men don't relate to female characters a lot in movies, and why they throw such fits when they're a major action movie with a female male character. I get it. I guess white men also need representation. It's just, it used to be like 90% of them and 10% of all the others. And nowadays, you know, the percentage shifts and they don't like it. But returning to the, you know, revenge horror, why men are drawn to this genre? I don't know. I don't have the answer to this question. Maybe someone will explain it to me. But for me, it feels like they make and they watch these movies only to see the brutalization of a woman without feeling bad about themselves, because in the end, women win in these films. Yes, I have a point. I'm getting to it. So that's why Fresh feels so refreshing. Yes, I said that. It's because this movie does not show graphic brutalization of a victim. It's still a revenge fantasy It's still revenge horror, and it's very gory, yeah, very, very gory and very violent, but it does not relish in the victimization of a woman. And I think it has something to do with the fact that it was directed by a woman. The director, Mimi Cave, actually commented on that, and I have a couple of quotes that I really loved. I wasn't interested in seeing women getting cut up on the screen. I feel like there's enough violence towards women in the world that I don't need to continue to show those images. I didn't need to be too expository in my approach. If you're made aware of what's happening, it's scarier to think about it than to see it. And the second quote, again, I just knew that there's already such a fear that exists, especially in women's minds, like day to day, that I didn't have to create that fear. It was already there. So I just had to tap into it, and I didn't have to do that by showing them their own bodies on screen. I could just allude to it with sound design. That's what I loved about this movie. Very nice horror, very scary, without actually relishing in the violence against women. So what is this movie about? I think the main metaphor that goes through this movie is very obvious. I mean, it's a movie about a cannibal. He literally eats women's flesh. He consumes female bodies. That is as literal as you can get when you talk about consumption of women's bodies by men. The modern dating is a very cannibalistic process, if you think about it, because women tend to be valued only by their flesh, by their bodies. All the value is placed in how we look. And actually that's an interesting point, because the main villain, Steve, he's a plastic surgeon. Plastic surgeons, what do? They cut up bodies to make them fit beauty standards. So women are viewed in parts. And in this movie, it's very, very literal. Like, it's literal parts. And in one scene, it was so direct, it was so on the nose that I don't think anyone missed it. It was the scene when we see Steve's wife, Anne, as she is taking a shower. It is revealed that she misses parts of her leg, and we see her naked, we see her very vulnerable and frail. And in the next shot, we see the power and the strength and the wholeness of a man as he's running. Very straightforward, but I think very effective. So what else does this movie tell us about modern dating and just, women's survival in patriarchy? It tells us that a lot of women survive this very hostile, sexist environment by following the rules of it, by creating the veneer of compliance, but still following their own agenda. Because how does Noah survive? She tricks Steve into thinking that she is still into him. She tricks him into thinking that she is a good girl, that she also wants to be a cannibal. And he falls for it. He starts trusting her. He thinks, oh yeah, this one is different. This one is a good girl. This one is a special girl. This one is not like the other girls.
You're just different. And I knew it from the moment I met you.
This was his mistake, because we are never not like the other girls. We are just like other girls, because girls are awesome.
I forgot to handcuff you.
Yeah. You did.
And also the fact that he falls for this Noah's charade, it tells us that if she kept this up, if she kept going with this charade, he would probably replace his wife, and with her, he would replace his wife, with a new younger woman. Because as I understood the character of his wife, she was one of his victims, because we see that she's missing a leg. For me, it was kind of obvious that she was one of his victims that he fell for, like he fell for Noah. But unlike Noah, Anne continued this game. She continued to identify with her oppressor. And I think it's quite an interesting thing to think about, because there are women in this world who are complicit in their own oppression, who stand with their oppressors. And I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know how to explain why they do that. Probably because we're all socialized like that, to see men as superior, and it's very natural to want to side with someone who's stronger. There are women like that, like Anne, who choose the side of their oppressor and oppress other women. Maybe they do it to survive. Maybe they do it because they enjoy this borrowed power. I don't know, but they exist, and Anne is the example of such women. And another interesting aspect of this movie is how it presents modern dating. And actually, it made me think about the Netflix TV series You, and how its showrunner, Sarah Gamble, described this intrinsic horror of modern dating. So her quote is, "To me, there's just about nothing scarier than the truth that we can never really know another person. And nowhere is that writ larger than in romance. We're auditioning people to be the primary person in our lives, basically, and hoping that we somehow see into their true selves before we're in too deep. It seems more or less impossible, right?" She is 100% correct. It is very scary to trust a person. You really fall for a person, and then you find out that they're, I don't know, best case scenario, like Woody Allen films. Worst case scenario, serial killer. And also, I wanted to focus on two scenes that made me think some thoughts. The first scene is an opener, is where Noah goes on a disastrous date with a nice guy trademark.
The women in our parents' generation, they just cared more about how they dressed and just kind of like how they looked. Like, they were more into femininity. You know what I mean? Like, nowadays, I feel like girls, they just wear oversized everything like it's a blanket. Because I think you would just look great in a dress.
She tells him that it's not working, she's not feeling it, and what does he do?
Wow. I was literally just being polite. You're not even my type, to be honest, so.
Okay.
Oh, that's funny? That's hilarious? Yeah. Okay. Good luck finding a guy, you stuck-up bitch.
He does not take rejection very well, to say the least. He starts insulting her and telling her that she's ugly and he wasn't into her in the first place. It's very, very common in the dating scene. I think a lot of women relate to that, me included, even though I don't actually date men. Well, I tried, and there were tons of situations where I was like texting with a guy and he was showering with me with compliments, and then I'm just telling him that I don't feel like it's working. And, you know, just like that, I find out that I'm ugly and I'm fat, and he was just being polite. I'm not even offended. I think it's kind of funny, pathetic and funny. It is what it is. And the second scene that made me think thoughts was the stranger danger scene. So in this scene, it's late in the evening. Noah is returning from her date. It's like a dark alley, late at night, and she's walking to her car. And then she understands that someone is following her. She feels like there is a man behind her. So she quickens her steps and she gets to her car, and of course she drops her keys, which is very cliche, but okay. And then she just turns around and sees that the guy who was following her is just a young father who is cradling his baby strapped to his chest, absolutely harmless. And her reaction to that is to say that, oh my god, I'm so stupid, how could I think so? You know what? Her reaction was absolutely justifiable. It's a good reaction. And here's what's bugging me a lot, is that society likes to gaslight women about it, about the stranger danger. Women are constantly told that #not all men, that we shouldn't consider all men dangerous. We shouldn't be conscious of their presence, because otherwise we are bigoted and misandrists or whatever. But at the same time, when a woman is kidnapped, harassed, raped or killed, what do we hear? She shouldn't have worn this miniskirt. She shouldn't have walked in the dark alley alone. She shouldn't have gone to that dude's apartment without knowing him really well. So, what is it? It couldn't be both at the same time. Pick one. Either we think all men are dangerous and save our lives, and we're not blamed afterwards, or we don't think all men are dangerous and we end up being killed and blamed for not thinking that all men are dangerous. What is it? That's what's bugging me. I don't understand how lots of people don't see this discrepancy. It's like broken logic. Yeah. Anyway, in conclusion, maybe I should say some words about the movie itself. It's good. It's a good movie. Yeah, I think some movie experts could say a lot more, but I just wanted to rant a little bit. I should mention that the leads of this movie are absolutely brilliant. Daisy Edgar-Jones and Sebastian Stan. They have great chemistry and they are brilliant in their roles. I don't think I've ever seen Daisy in anything before that, but she really piqued my interest. I think I would be following her career. And Sebastian Stan, always a delight to look at. But, obviously I don't know him personally. I've met him at a convention once. It was like 2-second interaction. I'm sure he's a perfectly nice man, but I don't think I would go to weekend getaway in the woods with him either.